Every day, independent oil and natural gas producers are out there drilling smarter, going farther, and delivering the energy that fuels our economy and strengthens our national security. It's a side of the industry that's dynamic and foundational to how affordable, reliable energy gets made in America. This podcast is about diving into that world. We're talking tech, policy, production, and pressure points. Everything that shapes how American energy actually works. This is Longer Laterals. Welcome to another episode of Longer Laterals, where America's energy story meets Washington. I'm Anne Bradbury, the CEO of the American Exploration and Production Council. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Julie Woodard of Expand Energy. Julie is Expand's Senior Land Manager and incoming president of the American Association of Professional Landmen. And she's going to talk to us about what is a landman, how landmen are involved in bringing projects from map to market, and the evolving role of landmen in powering American energy dominance. Julie, thank you so much for being with us today. Landmen are having a moment in pop culture right now, given the popular show entitled Landmen. So I thought we should start by telling us a little bit about what is a landman.
Yeah, sure. So a landman is the public-facing representative of either an oil and gas company or other energy company who interacts and negotiates with landowners or other parties to secure leases or other contracts typical and needed for exploration and development of minerals. I always like to say landmen are negotiators, problem solvers, innovators, connectors, and relationship builders. Interestingly enough, in 2017, the profession landman was ranked as the third top job in America by CNN Money, which I don't think most people are aware of. And landmen are involved in just about every energy project that you can think of. So from traditional oil and gas to wind, carbon capture, solar, geothermal, fuel cell and storage, and then more recently, what you hear a lot about, the data center projects. We have kind of two specific types, I would say. So your in-house landman is responsible for the negotiation and trades and deals with other companies and also individuals, but also is responsible for drafting contracts, clearing title, kind of preparing everything from a land standpoint for drilling or other operations. And then on the flip side, you have independent field or land consultants that are generally the industry's contact with the public. They kind of do the work on the front end to determine ownership, locate owners, and negotiate with them as well on leases and other contracts and agreements that are also necessary for drilling and other operations.
Obviously, this is a highly fictionalized show for entertainment purposes, but are there some similarities to what landmen do on a daily basis? And what are some differences in your profession from what you see on the show?
Yeah, so absolutely. I'll start with the threats that are portrayed throughout the show. One specifically, the first one that was kind of a major one was the well blowout. In a kind of heroic moment, Tommy seals the leak. That is not the role of a landman. However, he is out there and he's engaging with and talking with owners that, on this particular site, that there's an issue. And so our landmen, especially those that work in the field, would typically engage with and interact with surface owners on any issue that happens daily with us. So the types of things that we do interact with them on vary, and we're definitely not out there, sealing leaks and doing anything like that. The nature of the industry certainly is high risk, high reward. Very common to face different types of threats, but not common to face like life or death encounters necessarily when you're out there
cartels, not high on the list.
So I was going to say, Tommy engages with, in a lot of negotiations with the cartel. Again, that's very dramatized. I don't know anybody personally that's ever dealt with a cartel or anything of that level, although the landman is responsible and is involved with negotiations with whomever is in control of that land that's being pursued. So, you don't know who you're going to, I have countless stories of landmen that have had the opportunity to work with some really unique people throughout their careers. I haven't heard any stories about the cartel though. So, yeah. So I will say, landmen do often find themselves in ambiguous situations in which they're faced with balancing business interests with social responsibility. And I think the show shows that to some degree. It's definitely Hollywood and it's definitely dramatized. So, and then, back to kind of the blowout and things like that. The industry has done a really, really good job of putting in place environmental and safety standards that are very strict. The protocols that are in place are, things that the industry prides itself on. That I think was very much downplayed in the show. So I would say that's kind of something that we want to make sure we say that's not how that works. So yeah. And then, community engagement. I think the show does a decent job of highlighting the importance of that. He's a relationship builder. I mean, it shows him doing that. And I think just the diversity of day-to-day responsibilities is also shown there as well.
So safety culture that is so important to this industry, not portrayed, but importance of community building and community engagement is, maybe a little more on point.
Yes.
Have you seen, from your perspective, an increase or resurgence in interest in the profession and becoming a landman because of the show?
Yeah. So I don't have like raw data to support it, but yes, I would say that we do believe that this is definitely a very unprecedented time that we're getting attention on this profession. And I think it is at the spear of supporting energy dominance, solving world energy challenges. And I do think the younger generation wants to do something like that. I mean, they want to participate in something in their career that they believe is very, very impactful. And I think that the show is actually kind of drawing attention to that. Yeah.
Do they know what they're getting into when they do that? Yeah. Or do they think they're going straight to, Philly, Baltimore, and West Texas?
Yeah, I would guess no. One of the things with, AAPL provides curriculum guidance, and we have 16 accredited programs at major universities across the United States that offer programs in land management. And so I would say, those programs are thriving. We have a lot of students graduating and going into all of these different areas that we've talked about. So I think we have a pretty robust group of people entering the industry and the profession anyways. But I do think the show is just drawing more attention to it. And I mean, just, neighbors or anybody saying, well, what's that? Like, just like any other show about doctors or attorneys or any other profession, it's new, and it's seemingly very exciting. And I will say that's another similarity I think that the show portrays is the kind of diversity of your day to day. That's true. I mean, you really don't know where you're going each day. I mean, that's the exciting part.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. And, you are probably not what people picture when they think about a landman, especially those who's, mostly been exposed to the concept of a landman from the show. So talk a little bit about what it is to be a female landman.
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting concept as well. Well, concept in that a lot of people from the beginning of my career asked the question, are you a land man? Are you a land woman? Do you do something different? Do you do the same? And, back in like the 30s is when local associations of landmen started getting together and having meetings, and AAPL, the American Association of Professional Landmen, started at it like their first national association in 1955. That initial membership was confined to only men over the age of 21, weren't members of the Communist Party, were salaried company men working for oil and gas companies. So very, very, very specific, did exclude females. Obviously, since then, a lot has changed. We've brought in field brokers and independents and females. Obviously, we've had 2 female presidents. I'll be the 3rd next year. And, we've got members living and working in 44 states. It's much different than it was. So really, my I would say my role is no different than any of my male counterparts
Yeah.
at all. So
Yeah.
and I call myself a landman. I don't call myself a landwoman. I think of it as the same as any other profession, a doctor, an attorney. You don't change it based on gender. So
Yeah. Very cool. Well, you've certainly risen to the very top ranks of landmen, and are, so well known and well respected in industry, and are just such a great voice
well, thank you.
for that particular segment. So this podcast is called Longer Laterals, and as you know, that's a reference to how industry is continuing to do more with less, to drill further, to go further, and talk a little bit about that. That certainly will have had an impact on your job, as that impact surface disturbance and what happens on land. How has longer laterals impacted your work as a landman, and as you've seen that evolve over the last 15 years?
Sure. Yeah. So there's more to consider from a negotiation and coordination and compliance standpoint with longer laterals. So as you know, longer laterals means fewer wells, less disturbance, which is appealing to most. But on the land side, it generally results in more royalty owners potentially. And so there's just potentially additional surface owners and subsurface access needed, just more of what we do needed for one project rather than several spread out over time. So ultimately, I think we've been doing it long enough. It's not a negative impact to us at all. It does change the planning timeframes that we have, and we have longer lead times because you have more units, more people, more work on the front end.
But generally, does it make it harder? Does it make it easier? Because you have bigger pools of people, right? But less drilling, less wells.
That's right. No, I do think that is actually very helpful to us in our negotiations, and especially if we are working with not just private landowners, but state agencies on areas that really require no surface disturbance. We're able to do that. So horizontal drilling has been able to allow us to do that, where, horizontal drilling where we are accessing resources from an adjacent location without physically disrupting the land directly above the reservoir. So the ownership between the surface and the minerals could differ there. So that's additional work, but also the same type of work that we would be used to doing regardless. And so at the end of the day, I think it's a win for everybody because you're able to do something without disrupting land, which is a positive to anybody that owns it.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the tie-in to permitting and AI data centers and the growing need for energy, and some of the conversations that we're having in Washington right now. So Expand Energy is the biggest natural gas producer in the country. You're primarily in the Appalachia Basin, and a little bit in Louisiana as well. Um, so Appalachia in particular is notoriously constrained when it comes to pipeline capacity. Does that impact your work as a landman?
Well, so first of all, yes, Expand is very uniquely positioned to answer the call for this demand that we're seeing, and how that translates over to the work that we're doing, and the work, how it would impact the land team. I mean, the constraints that you see in the Northeast are real. They are one of many factors that we take into consideration when we're doing development planning with our asset teams. So yes, it is something that is one of the big items that we take into consideration. Think it's really exciting, the energy demand that we're seeing for powering AI. I mean, if you partner that with our ability, and not just Expands, but the energy industry's ability to meet that demand, I think it is a transformational opportunity to support energy independence and a lot of the other issues, just being able to supply reliably the demand that we see. And, beyond the technical infrastructure, the projects have the potential to serve as a cornerstone for economic growth in these communities. Specifically in the Northeast, they have the potential to alleviate congestion on the main line by creating additional in-basin demand for gas. And The landman's role in these projects is critical. I see public perception being one of the biggest issues. Permitting is something that you are hearing a lot about, and I think a lot of us are involved in a lot of those conversations. And while that is something that is a huge issue, I believe that will be worked through. And I think one of the things that probably receives a little bit less attention is public perception and adoption of what it is that we're trying to do with some of these data center projects. The landman is at the forefront of every one of these endeavors in everything from identifying site locations, securing site control, which means basically saying, hey, all of these people have committed to sell their land, minerals, everything for one of these projects. And that's a really big undertaking. So anyways, they're out there having all these conversations, trying to do that. I think it's something that's really important that we have to keep in mind with all of these projects. So yeah.
So that raises another question in my mind, and that is, I think industry led by landmen, career landmen, have been really incredible. And by industry, I mean the oil and gas industry, at going to communities and getting community buy-in and really investing in their social license to operate in a way that communities really welcome industry and want them to come and to stay and to invest. And are there, as there's this sort of different and new industry that's now expanding throughout the country, are there lessons that you think tech might be able to learn from the oil and gas industry in terms of going into new communities and preserving and building that social license to operate?
Yes. I mean, I think that's a great question. And I think what I would say is that anybody who is engaging or embarking on any type of one of these projects needs to invest heavily in time and resources on the front end of these projects with early transparent communication. And it may be a landman leading that. I obviously am an advocate for the profession, and I think there is a role for a landman in every one of these projects, and doing it up front and being, like I said, very transparent, holding meetings, identifying your key stakeholders, putting together kind of a robust plan of communication and bringing the community along with you is going to yield so many benefits right off the bat. I've had lots of conversations with people that are working on other projects and some of the even data center builders that are realizing now, hey, we don't talk enough about this piece. And while we can get all the different parties to the table to elevate a project, you can go as far as you can, and then you're going to get potentially pushback is what they're seeing right in the communities at the local level. And you're having potentially, this is just an example, but like a data center project in Northeast PA. Those companies behind a project might have somebody from California or elsewhere coming in to have a town hall later on, tell people all about what they're going to do, and that isn't received as well. So the landmen that have been working with a lot of these owners for years and years and years have a much stronger relationship and really do take it very seriously. How we engage with people and how we want to partner with them to make sure that everybody is fully aware of what we're doing. So I always just say every energy project needs landmen, and all landmen should be members of AAPL, because that's another thing is that we do get sometimes, not every landman is a member of AAPL, and AAPL does require strong code of ethics, standards of practice, certification, those types of things. So that what we want is that any owner or anybody for that matter that engages with any AAPL landman can feel confident they're working with somebody who operates professionally and ethically. So that's a top priority. And it has been at our company for years and years and years, putting our owners and our stakeholders first. And we talk a lot about kind of that license to operate. So yes, big proponent of that.
And I think to your earlier point, landmen aren't just in oil and gas. Every form of energy
That's right.
has landmen. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, last question for you, Julie. And we ask this of every podcast guest. What is one thing about your job or the oil and gas industry generally that would surprise people in Washington?
Yeah, I would say no other profession requires all of the required skill sets of a landman. So I kind of opened with it and I'll close with it. Landmen are negotiators, problem solvers, innovators, connectors, and relationship builders. And I believe our work significantly influences local economies.
Well, it sounds like we could use some landmen in Washington. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being with us. This has been really fun to learn a little bit more about the landman profession and to do a little myth versus fact about the show. So appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.